You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Well, hey, everybody. This is, I guess, episode 2 of season 2. Pretty excited to get back to our our regular format after last week, which was super fun when Brett was on our show and all that madness ensued. But getting back to
He's such a chaotic person.
we'll have to have him back again sometime. So I'm going first this week, and we all have brains, right?
Yes. I hope so.
I mean, and I think the brains of those who listen to this podcast are naturally like the finest examples of brains because our audience is so fabulous.
Of course.
But I think we had this idea that our brains control our bodies. And for those of you who are paying attention in science class, you probably know that is not entirely true. I mean, certainly there's many things that our brain does for our body. However, there's a lot of systems in our body that would probably get along just fine without any interaction or input from the brain.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
So
the heartbeat, I don't think about my heart beating.
Sure, certain things just happen automatically. And I'm thinking also in terms of like reactions and stuff, like our brain is fast, but our reactions are even faster. Like if I flash a light or in your eyes, like a photograph, like a camera, there's the word I'm looking for, a camera, like a flash goes off, your eyes will like automatically close, and it's a faster reaction than the time it takes, like, to go to your brain and back. Or if you touch a hot pan, like you instantly pull your hand back. And a lot of those sort of those reactions happen faster than a signal could reach the brain and then decide what to do and send instructions back to your eyelids or fingers or whatever. So we have a lot of these things that happen, right?
It's a spinal reflex.
Exactly, yeah. So when we study animals and evolution, we're often studying growing complexity. I do want to point out that evolution doesn't necessarily mean things have to get more complex, but it does allow for it. And being more complex often has advantages. So we often do see, organisms become more complex over time, right? So when you think about brains, they're very complex. And so we know that they must have arisen from something simpler. And it should not come as a surprise that there are animals who do not even have what we would call a brain, and yet they can still find food and eat and even move around. Can you think of any animals that don't have brains?
Oysters,
slugs.
Okay, yeah.
Worms. Clams.
Sponges.
Insects.
Yeah, you got some good ones. I had down like sea stars, sea anemones, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, all the corals and sponges. A lot of things in the ocean. Kind of going into Rachel's lane here.
Yay!
So there's a few others. You guys mentioned some, but one really big group, and the ones I want to feature today are the jellyfish, or if you want to get away from using the word fish for things that aren't a fish, we would call them sea jellies, right?
Yeah.
Sea jellies.
Yeah.
I see jellies.
So-
Do you see jellies?
I do see jellies. Now, here's the thing. I think jellyfish are fascinating. They're one of the things that scare the utter crap out of me.
Yeah.
Well, luckily in our day-to-day, we don't run into them a whole lot. But
True.
sea jellies, they don't have brains, and yet they're able to move around. They can sense food and even capture it and bring it to their mouth. And scientists want to be able to study sea jellies as they have remained essentially unchanged for millions of years. Scientists have even talked about how the nervous system of a jellyfish is basically like a living fossil because it's showing us how things perhaps were in the past. And so because they've remained essentially unchanged for likely billions of years, we can study their amazing like neurons, and we can begin to understand how something much more complex like a brain could have evolved. But because like keep in mind, like a brain is really just a huge mass of neurons, right? So jellies have individual neurons and they do work together, but there isn't like a single bundle of them in a large mass that we would call a brain. So, studying the neurons of sea jellies seems like a great idea, but there's one
Hmm.
big problem. Like, how exactly do you study the neurons in a sea jelly, right? Like, they aren't something you can
Right.
easily see, which makes it difficult to study. And if you can basically figure out where they are, how do you figure out like what they're doing at any given moment? Like, it's kind of an interesting puzzle to have to figure out how you would do that.
They're just so
Yeah.
blobby and drifty.
Right, exactly. So recently, a team of researchers came up with an interesting solution. So, first off, the species they sought to study was a very small jelly. And this really kind of surprised me. It's only about 1 centimeter across.
Wow.
What?
I didn't
So,
know
we're
they came
talking,
that
That's
small.
tiny.
yeah. I think we think of the big, huge ones get all the press, probably the stuff that, like Rachel
There's
was
way
saying, she was
more.
maybe afraid of or some of the bigger ones. But this was a little tiny one, only a
Hmm.
centimeter across. And I was thinking, well, that's really weird. Like, why wouldn't you study a bigger, larger jellyfish? Wouldn't that make it easier than studying a small one? But if you think about it, if it's that small, you can actually view the entire body at once under a microscope. So
Hmm.
that all of a sudden it's like, okay,
Ah.
that's
That
pretty
makes sense.
cool, yeah. And so even if it fits under the microscope, though, you have this other problem in that even if you could see the neurons, you can't tell which ones are active, which is what I mentioned earlier. So here's where it gets weird. As those sea jellies were not strange enough, I mean, we could just
Which they are.
and we'll probably do just an episode on sea jellies because this is not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something else that was really weird. Recently, this research team was able to genetically modify the genome of the jelly so the neurons would glow when they were active.
What?
Oh,
So you can, for the first
That's
time, really
so
understand
cool.
which ones are being activated in real time while you are watching,
wow. Like an
which
animation.
is exactly. This is
That's
so
so
cool.
cool.
At first, when I heard about this, I thought maybe this would be like a callback to Victoria's recent topic on
Yeah,
bioluminescence.
bioluminescence.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, so this is why I had to kind of dig further on this because these jellies do not give off their own light. What the researchers did is they used the same technique that was used a few years back to make glowing mice. Remember hearing about this in the news?
Vaguely. Yeah.
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
So the technique is called GCamp. That's all capitals except a lowercase a for whatever reason. It's an acronym, but basically, this technique requires a blue light source to excite the cells that are being studied. So you shine this blue light on it, and then it glows. Much like I kind of think of it like putting a flashlight on your like the hands of your watch, and then it glows because it's re-emitting the energy it absorbed. That's the
Hmm.
basic idea of what's going on here. If you want to do a deep dive on that, there's an excellent Wikipedia article about GCamp that kind of sums up the whole process and the different versions and stuff, and it's kind of cool. So you can check that out on your own time.
So is it
But what these,
basically a kind of fluorescence?
yeah, it's causing it to fluoresce under light. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So the researchers were able to, what they were able to see using this technique is that the jellies have a branching tree of neurons and that they affect each other even though they're reacting to like a single stimuli, um, like at the tips of the, tentacles or whatever, that is causing a wider scale reaction. And what ends up happening is the whole side of the jellyfish folds in reaction to detecting an animal on near the edge, and it basically folds the side in almost like a burrito starting to fold up or a taco shell, and it brings whatever food it's detected toward the middle, and at the same time the mouth actually turns in that direction toward the food. And keep in mind this is all happening without a brain, which is really amazing. What they've basically been to figure out is that this what would seem like a thinking response to sort of like bring this food up to your mouth is really the result of the structure of the body and how the neurons are laid out. And this is just sort of an emergent property of that, which is super cool to see in action. There are videos online. If people want to check them out, you can actually watch this happening and see the glowing neurons and whatnot, which is really cool. And
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's really cool and amazing to see how like a really simple combination of neurons laid out in a very specific way ends up creating complex behaviors. It's also cool to be a human with a brain that has evolved to a point where uh, our behaviors include studying and coming to understand how this whole system works. Because
Yeah.
it's really just I don't want to say culmination. Humans are not the culmination of evolution, but like we are kind of doing the same thing. You listening right now and us talking right now and recording this, it kind of uses the same process in a much much more complex way. But that just sort of blows my mind to be talking about my mind and how this all works. But anyways, that's whoa, wow, it gets pretty deep there. But that's what I wanted to
Mhm.
talk about was glowing sea jellies without brains and how they're actually helping us understand how brains evolved. So aside from the Wikipedia page on GCamp, which I read to even begin to understand how that process works, my source this
Mhm.
week actually came from a scholarly article called a genetically tractable jellyfish model for systems of evolutionary neuroscience. It was from a paper that was published in the journal Cell back on November 24th, 2021. So if you're super curious, check that out using your brain.
Sweet.
Thanks, Kirk.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no problem.
Kirk.
That's what I got. I tell you what, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it'll be time to hear from Rachel. Strange by Nature podcast is brought to you by listeners like you who have joined the Society of Strange, our membership group on over at patreon.com/strangebynature. Society of Strange members can join at one of 3 different membership levels and help support the show and also get some fun stuff like water bottle stickers or access to super secret content. So a thank you to those who have joined already to help make this podcast possible. If you haven't joined yet, we'll see you soon over at the Society of Strange at patreon.com/strangebynature. See you soon.
Okay. So before we came up with what we actually did for our year anniversary,
Yeah.
I have had this particular topic on the back burner, just
Okay.
waiting,
You've been saving up?
saving this topic for a special time.
Oh
'Cause
boy.
I think it's bonkers.
Starting off
Okay.
season 2 bonkers, I'm all for it.
Well, yeah, you have to. So, first question. What do y'all think of time?
Time?
Oh man.
Time.
Whoa. We're really going for the shallow topics this week, aren't we?
Yeah, wow. Time. How much
Yeah,
how,
think about
how much time you got, Rachel? I think
Okay,
time
I'll clarify.
I think time is relative.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Okay, let me clarify. What organisms perceive time?
Oh, okay.
oh,
So
wow. Okay.
obviously we perceive time since you asked us about time, but now we want to know what other organisms perceive time. I think a lot of them do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say all of them do. I mean,
Because,
you have like
Okay.
circadian rhythms and stuff like that, which is a
yeah,
built-in
exactly.
function of time. And I've
Mhm.
also know that when I used to work at a certain aquarium at the Mall of America,
Naming no
and
names.
That one.
it's gone by a few different names over the years. But you'd always hear this thing that like goldfish and other like fish can't tell time. And that
Hmm.
was
Mhm.
total bunk because the fish would always show up at the exact same spot in the aquarium every day at the same time. They knew exactly what time it was because they knew when they got fed.
Mhm.
So
There you go.
my gut would say that almost every living thing can tell time or perceive time, but I'm sure you're
In
going to enlighten
some
us.
way.
Yeah.
Tell us more, Rachel.
Okay. So, I learned about this a while ago, and this starts all the way back in 1929 with a couple of students and a weird professor in Germany.
Oh boy.
All right.
1929 in Germany. What could go wrong?
So and the original paper, I unfortunately wasn't able to read the original paper just because it was.
You don't speak German?
In
I
German.
don't speak or read German.
Yeah.
But the original paper and experiment was trying to find out if bees perceive time
Okay.
overall.
All right.
So what they
I-
were
I'm-
trying to do,
I would guess yes, but I'm super excited to hear.
that's fair. So what they were, because most people would say, no, they don't. Why would they? It doesn't make any sense.
Uh-huh.
But Max, there was a later experiment that was used, but the first one was, what was his name? It was a future Nobel laureate, Carl von Frisch.
Okay.
He helped with a group of students, and what they were trying to do was they were trying to figure out if bees perceived time. Because you don't know. And what they decided to do was train the bees, first of all, to come out at 4 p.m. every day for a little bit of sugar water. Okay?
Just like the
Okay.
fish.
They trained just like
yeah,
the fish.
just like the fish.
So they were able to train these bees to come out at 4 p.m. every day to get some sugar water. And like they monitored their behaviors and their just the activity in the hive and everything,
Mhm.
because
Right.
we know that sunlight that sunlight and like temperature have a lot to do with how bees will perceive what time of day, because they're active during the day. They are diurnal creatures, they're not nocturnal.
Okay.
So they were able to train these bees to come out for the sugar water. And then what happened was some scientists said, hey, yo, crazy thing. So you have trained the bees to come out at 4 p.m. How do you know that they're not just sensing the light that's around you and not perceiving that you come at the exact same time or whatever?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So they did it again in complete darkness.
Mhm.
And the bees came out at 4 p.m. They were able to their activity levels and everything came up when they were supposed to, and they came out at 4 p.m. And so other scientists reviewing the paper and everything, as you do, were like, well, maybe it's temperature. So they did it
like
in a temperature
the
control.
temperature a certain time
The
of day at a
temperature-
certain temperature.
Exactly.
Yep.
Rather than like being able to tell that time has passed.
So they are
Okay.
eliminating all the variables.
They're trying to eliminate all the variables.
So difficult.
So they went and took these bees into a salt mine where it's temperature controlled and it doesn't change,
Yep.
and underground and dark. So they did it again, and the bees came out at 4 p.m.
And this is, to be clear, this is a new group of bees that were trained over. It wasn't just the same bees. I'm assuming, like.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they did all of that. And then somebody else was like, well,
Hold on a moment.
hold on a moment. Are you sure that it's an internal clock? So to make sure that it wasn't like radiation or communicating or anything like anything else, these scientists took the bees on a plane. Okay.
Bees on a
They
plane.
took them on a plane
Yep.
and flew them from they
1929
flew
plane.
them. At this point, I think it's 1955. This is many years later.
Okay.
This is
All
all
right.
Okay, so
whole
definitely not the
series.
same bees. Yeah.
Not the same bees. So they left Paris. So they started off, it was a German biologist. So this particular segment of experiments was run by biologist Max Renner. He left Paris and boarded a flight to New York City. or to New York rather. And
Did he tell anyone he had a suitcase full of bees?
he had to, because it couldn't be on the flight. It couldn't be in the luggage compartment. It had to
Right.
be on the flight
Right.
with him.
What is that buzzing
And-
noise?
What is
Nothing.
going on?
It was nothing.
And like people were really upset about that, and people were
Oh, yeah.
very like, he had to get a bunch of special licenses.
You think the toddler screaming is
um,
bad?
Yeah, and the flight crew apparently was going to spray DDT inside the airplane at one point, and the scientists, according to a couple of the articles that I was reading about it, doing some of the research, is they had to threaten them that they would let the bees loose if they didn't stop spraying the DDT in the airplane. Like,
Wow.
oh my gosh.
Jeez.
So fun times. So they were trying to find out more or less if bees have an internal clock like humans do to perceive time. So in order to do that, they kept the bees in a very dark box or whatever to transport them from Paris to New York, where they then, and these ones had also been trained to come out at 4 p.m. for sugar water.
4 p.m. Paris time. Yeah.
4 p.m. Paris time.
Gotcha.
Are
So,
the
of
bees
course-
jet lagged now is the question.
The bees came out at they came out
At 10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. but 4 p.m. Paris time. Expecting
I would have been
sugar water.
way more impressed if they came out at 4 p.m. New York time. Although I realize
yeah.
that would have probably ruined the experiment and
Oh,
shown that
100%.
But, you know, it's like, well, they looked at a big clock in Grand Central Station.
Haha, they knew. But it was just, they could not, they were in a brand new time zone. And this actually has developed a lot of really interesting experiments forward, not only into like what bees, as you were talking about, Kirk, with brains, but what how they think and perceive things, but whether or not they have like little mind maps or how they do waypoints. And there's been a lot of really cool studies about it. But I was just really excited because somebody brought 5,000 bees onto a plane from Paris to New York just to see if they would get jet lagged. And I've been holding on to this story because it sounds ridiculous. Like,
I
of
love
course science would do that. Why wouldn't you do that? It's just a question of course. Why not?
I think this is
And
also
it's
the
so cool.
solution. This is the solution. It's like,
Right?
sir, put your mask back on, or we're letting the bees go. Put the mask on, or the bees come out.
Put your mask back on or we'll spray you with DDT.
Oh no.
I mean, DDT has low mammalian toxicity, so that's probably not a big of a threat. People might be afraid of it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to bring the science in. I'm sorry.
But it's just super cool because they've this has been a continuing series of experiments that have been happening where they're testing on different temperature degrees in different climates in different times of year to see how the bees react and if it's truly them perceiving time through an internal clock or if it's just some sort of outside external trigger that we're not controlling for. So that is what I wanted to share with you both today. It's bees, it's time, and it's weird.
Awesome. I love stories that show the creativity and the lengths that scientists have to go to figure some of these strange things out and make sure that what we know is actually what we know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very cool.
And
I'm going to
there's-
go ahead and just
yeah.
take this one off my list.
Yes!
Beat me to it. All right.
I've been holding on to this one for so long, Kirk. But that's all I have for you both today. And I think we're going to go to a break. And when we return,
Just
it'll
a
be
tiny,
Victoria.
little tiny break. Get ready,
Little one.
Victoria. You've got about 10 seconds.
All right. Ready?
Now it's only 5.
Go.
All right. Buckle up, folks. It's going to get bloody.
Oh. Okay.
Sure, why not? We'll start off this way.
Today, I'm talking about menstruation.
Oh,
Of course you
okay. Are you talking about human menstruation or are you talking about other mammal menstruation?
Well, yeah. Good question.
Because
this-
one of which I'm very familiar with.
Well, the show is called Strange by Nature. What is so weird about menstruation? About half the human population does it. And
Yeah.
obviously, a lot of cultures have a bunch of hang-ups about it. But,
True.
periods are a totally normal part of life.
Mhm.
So what's
It-
so? I'm guessing you have a strange angle to take this, though.
Well,
I mean, it's already strange because half our population bleeds once a month and we act like that's normal because it is, but it feels weird.
it is not
that's
normal.
That's the quote. We act like it's normal because it is. Okay. But Victoria's what to tell us that it's not. So go for it.
It's not normal in the animal kingdom.
Right.
Yeah, even if we restrict
course.
ourselves to placental mammals, very, very few species menstruate. As far as biologists have figured out, it's restricted to some primates, so humans, other apes, and old world monkeys, a few species of bats,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the elephant
lemurs.
shrew. No, not lemurs. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they fall under
No,
old world
not lemurs.
monkeys. Elephant shrew.
That's right. Elephant shrew. So
Yeah.
a shrew the size of an elephant?
You
Or
know,
an
I
elephant
didn't.
the size of a shrew.
I didn't look up.
Or is it a shrew with a really long trunk? Like nose? Like an
I
elephant?
did not look up what an elephant shrew looks like or
Let's
anything
just
about
put
its natural
elephant
Okay,
history.
shrew
that's
on the
fair.
list. We'll expect you to talk about it next week.
All I
Okay.
know is that it
Alright.
menstruates. And,
All right.
some animals, like dogs, bleed as part of their estrus cycle, but that is actually
Right.
different than menstruation.
Mhm.
So, for those of you who have forgotten the details from 7th grade health class, here's what happens during.
Or for those of us who were escorted to the gym during that time period to talk about how to do self-exams and things. Yeah,
Right.
we got a different talk. So,
I don't think that's wise. I think that boys should also know
it's
about
totally
menstruation.
unwise.
Yeah.
I think they changed that like later on.
Probably. All right, listen up, Palmisano children. Here we go. I know they're listening.
Hey, Stina.
Shout out to Clan Palmisano. All right.
Hey, Palmisano.
So it's actually very complex. There are a lot of hormones and processes that come into play. I'm not going to go over everything in detail. For our purposes,
That's
the
fair.
basics are there's an average cycle of 28 days that can vary a lot from person to person and from month to month. But as an ovary develops an egg to release, the uterus is also preparing for the potential implantation of a fertilized egg. And so as the levels of progesterone, which is a hormone, rise in the body,
Mhm.
the uterine lining, which is known as the endometrium, thickens. And then this thickened endometrium has a lot of blood vessels that are there to feed the embryo should it implant. Okay,
Got
with
it.
me so far?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so if fertilization and implantation don't happen, the progesterone levels fall and the lining is shed as blood exiting through the vagina. Of course,
Or you can use the term sloughed, as I believe is sometimes said.
sloughed, yes.
Not my favorite word.
Not my favorite word either.
No.
Of
Horrible.
course,
That's
many
awful.
people experience
know.
ugh. The moistness is
I'm
sloughed.
sorry.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. Keep going.
Just keep
Menstruation.
going. Keep
Of
going.
course, many people experience difficult symptoms as well. Pain, mood swings, and so forth.
Mhm.
Why is all of this happening? And why do so few mammals menstruate? So it is a really interesting question, and the answer is nobody knows for sure. Shockingly, this was not a subject that underwent a lot of research by the male scientists who completely dominated biology until recently.
I can't imagine why.
What? This is unstudied? Wow.
Yeah. So there have been a number of hypotheses over the years about why menstruation evolved. One is that it protects the uterus against pathogens that could be carried by sperm. Another is that menstruation is less energetically costly to the body than maintaining a thickened lining continually. Neither of these hypotheses hold water totally for various reasons. And in particular, the comparison to other species, all those factors would presumably hold true for, most mammals, but there are only a few that menstruate, right? So,
right.
So the main current hypothesis is that the menstrual cycle and all of its problems is actually only a side effect of a sort of an arms race between the mother and the fetus. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
I'm going to get to that arms race in a minute, but first,
Okay.
so in most mammals, this thickening of the endometrium that is later sloughed in humans.
I'm sorry, I brought it up.
That one.
That is later shed in humans.
Shed.
It doesn't happen until after the egg implants. So the egg implanting is what triggers the thickening of the endometrium.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
so you
humans,
lied to us earlier.
Sorry, what?
Oh, wait, no. Never mind. I take that back because you were talking about other animals, not humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. never
Welcome
mind.
to the conversation.
So in humans and other menstruating species, they think that the cycle of the endometrium thickening and then shedding is a defense mechanism against the embryo. So one of the big problems for placental mammals is that the fetus is basically foreign tissue in the mother's body. And the mother's immune system doesn't really want it there. So there are all these kind of immune system and hormone shenanigans that each side does to
make it possible.
To make it possible. And so the embryo, its goal is to get as many nutrients as possible. So it basically wants to burrow in deeper, and the mother's body doesn't want it to do that, and it tries to limit how far it can grow. Both of you are looking really uncomfortable. This makes me delighted.
Yep. I already had feelings about this, and they are just strengthening even more as you continue to talk. I'm like, yep.
Okay.
No.
Child as parasite. Got it. Go on.
Yeah, child as
Thank
parasite.
you. That is a word that I wanted to use, but wasn't sure if we were going to.
Yeah, totally.
We went
Fetus
there.
is a little parasite growing inside you. So primates, especially humans, have exceptionally aggressive and invasive placentas compared to other mammals.
Okay.
Hold on. The aggressive placenta. That's like a great
seriously.
band name.
Well, there's there's a pregnancy complication called placenta accreta, where basically the placenta goes farther than the endometrium and like burrows into the muscular wall of the uterus, which is really it's a quite dangerous.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah, quite dangerous complication of pregnancy. And you've probably heard of ectopic or tubal pregnancies, where the egg implants in the fallopian tube or elsewhere in the abdomen and just burrows in and can cause hemorrhage and unpleasant stuff like this. This is all a side effect of our...
Please stop using the word burrow.
It's a valid and accurate term. Burrow.
Picture a little, like a mole. That's not.
Not a mole.
Nope. It's another organ just latching on.
So when humans evolved to have this ovulation and thickening of the uterus on a schedule instead of in response to an implantation, it kind of gives the body more control over how it happens. And it's a way of sort of kind of pushing the embryo off a little bit, offering it all this blood supply and being like, here you go, you don't have to dig any deeper. Please don't.
Huh, interesting.
Okay.
So there is some pretty good evidence to support this hypothesis. Some of it's a little complex, but the main one is that all the mammals that do menstruate have these invasive type of placentals, and also their mating occurs over an extended period of time rather than like a limited estrus or heat, the way, say, a dog does.
Right.
Right.
Because, like, humans, for example, can mate at any time, obviously. And anytime.
Yep.
I could just cut that part out.
Right. There's certain times you're not supposed to. Let's be clear, but we'll cut that out.
Okay.
Oh, get it out. All right.
All right. There's also some evidence that there may be a role in culling abnormal embryos. Another way that humans are apparently exceptional is we have a huge number of embryos that wind up with chromosomal abnormalities compared to other species.
Right.
Really?
And so there's the hypothesis that the uterus kind of has some role in sensing whether an embryo is abnormal, and if so, preventing it from implanting most of the time. And so then the embryos then shed with the blood. And, that's fairly compelling, but it also remains to be seen if this is true in other menstruating species. As far as I know, that research hasn't been done yet. It's, I think, a really interesting topic. I mean, I am the one going into nursing school, so obviously I have more comfort with these topics than some folks. But it is really important, and it's been neglected. It's an area of research that's been neglected a lot over the decades, and more research in this area could give a lot of insights into reproductive disorders like endometriosis, endometrial cancer, preeclampsia, and repeated miscarriage that a lot of people suffer with.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, I know several friends of mine who have suffered miscarriages, and it's something that we definitely don't talk about, but it's extraordinarily common.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard, but yeah, these are all very important things that need to be studied for sure.
Yeah. It was maybe not that surprisingly difficult to find sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Articles from reputable organizations on the web that were for general readers on this subject. And I got most of my information from a scientific paper called The Evolution of Menstruation, a New Model for Genetic Assimilation by Dina Amera and colleagues that was published in Bioessays in January 2012. So shout out to that. Okay, you're going to be relieved to know that I'm going to stop talking now.
Hey, these things are important to talk about with kids, with people, and just in general. It's very important. People with vaginas need to know these things.
Yep.
Well, everyone does.
Well, yeah. Okay. People without vaginas also need to know these things. Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.
We're going to end it right there. Thanks, everybody. And so excited to see what happens in the rest of season 2.
Woohoo! Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.